Hello, and welcome to this Upgrade Your Sound product showcase. My name is Kurt Witt with Music and Arts. I'm really excited to spend some time talking about the Bellafina and Strobel line of violins made by Howard Core. I have a special guest joining me from Howard Core, Mr. Hans Anderson. Hans is here to discuss a couple of the key models, share some unique insights into what makes the Strobel and Bellafina models unique, and of course, answer any questions that might come up during the presentation. You can see some Q&A functionality at the bottom of your screen, so at any point during the session, feel free to post a question and somebody will be able to answer you. During this product showcase, I've got a couple of group polls all launched to get some feedback from the audience on a couple different subjects, and we can hear some discussion from our expert panelists on those topics as well. The Strobel and Bellafina violins are incredibly popular among both students, teachers, advancing students, orchestral teachers, and so forth. We're going to dive in depth into three particular models and hear from our expert Hans on why these instruments are a great choice for the advancing string player looking to upgrade to a better instrument. So welcome, Hans, and take it away.
Hey, Kurt, good to see you. Well, my name is Hans Anderson, and I'm the National Sales and Marketing Manager at Howard Core. Welcome to all those that are tuning in. I really appreciate the opportunity to share more details about these three violins. These are actually some of my favorite models, and as Kurt mentioned, I think your customers like them as well. So, but first, let me just give you a quick background of the Howard Core company story. Now, Howard Core himself was a cellist and a string educator, and he started the business back in 1976. Over the years, he and his family grew the business basically by bringing in the very best orchestral string products directly from Europe. And later in the 90s, started bringing things in from Asia. But really it was his, as a musician and an educator, it was really his high standards for tone quality and craftsmanship that laid the foundations upon which Howard really built this customer-focused business. So one of the key things about what we do is our setup shop, our USA setup shop. Our luthiers inspect and set up every instrument here in the USA. And it's so important because a good setup can give you easy playability, quick response, and full tonal spectrum. And so no matter what instrument it is, a good setup maximizes its that instrument to its fullest potential. How so? Well, our luthiers custom fit each and every bridge. You can see that here. There's a curvature, we call it the arch. The arching of the instrument is very important for acoustic properties, but that just means because it's wood and no two pieces of wood are exactly the same. Once it's carved, even though there's a template, there's going to be some minor variations, and that's natural and that's fine. But each bridge has to be custom cut. There's a sound post on the inside of the instrument. Looks like a little dowel, little stick. I'll try to show it in the light here. You may not be able to see it, but it's in there, trust me. It connects the top plate to the back. So whereas the bridge is transferring all the vibrations from the string to the top, the sound post is transmitting that to the back. You see with all these curves, you have to get that fit exactly right, and you have to get the positioning exactly right. And that's where an experienced luthier, in their hands, they know exactly where to put it. So we do that. We custom fit the pegs. We plane the fingerboard. The fingerboard at first glance looks to be perfectly flat. It's not. There's a slight concave curve to it. And that allows basically the string to vibrate. This is kind of a string vibrating in slow motion. If it were perfectly straight, you'd get a buzzing sound. And so you need that little bit, we call it scoop, or that little room for the string to vibrate. So that has to be done by hand plane, and that's an important part as well for the functioning and the tone of the instrument. And then we basically put it all together with whatever strings we're using, And then we've got our quality control folks and test players to make sure that once you receive it, basically all you have to do is tune it up and it's ready to play. So that's our goal. Is we do all the setup work to a very high degree, so that each and every instrument is really able to sound to its fullest potential.
Hans, that American setup has got to be so important, because remember, you're talking about an organic piece of wood that can change over time, and making sure that it's as close to getting to the customer's hands, it's as perfect as possible, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely right. I mean, the violin is one of the older instruments of all the instruments. I mean, it's been around for 300 or 400 years. So uh, the great makers of 1700s Cremona, Italy, names you've probably heard of like Stradivari or Guarneri, those patterns, those models are still being used today, still basically being copied. So everybody kind of knows the basic dimensions, the basic measurements, but every piece of wood is absolutely uniquely individual. And so it's up to a skilled maker to take that piece of wood and that's part of I'm going to talk a little bit more about that with what I've got in my hand is the Bellafina ML-30. So we've got the Bellafina and then two Strobels. So the Bellafina is kind of it's a great instrument for somebody that wants something better than a basic rental or basic beginning instrument. And there are some customers that they want nicer things. They want a nicer sound. This Bellafina has a warmer, richer tone than your typical student instrument. A lot of that is because it's made by our partner workshop in Romania, and they grow, they collect the woods locally. They're basically right next to the Carpathian Mountains, and so they're able to source spruce for the top and maple for the back and the sides. You can even see in the scroll the figuring of the maple there. But it's really that carving process that allows them to get a certain kind of sound. And so that our goal with the Bellafina ML-30 is to have a very friendly violin. I think there are some students and some parents that they think about a violin and they maybe hear somebody pick one, a young student pick one up, and it kind of sounds a little screechy, a little bright. Metallic would be a word that some people use to describe it. And what this Bellafina ML-30 has is just a broader, warmer, smoother. So I call it kind of a friendly, very friendly violin. Anyone can pick it up, pull a bow across it, and you're going to get just a very rich, smooth sound. So I'll do a little bit of playing later to kind of compare, but that's kind of why. If you need to show that customer that appreciates something a little bit better, but is still just starting out, I think this would be very appropriate. So the ML-30 uses an oil varnish. It's a kind of an orange brown color, slightly matte finish. So the fun thing about this model is the Zyek strings. The Zyek strings also help to give it a smooth sound and an immediacy of response. But really, it's that placement of the sound post, placement of the bridge exactly in the right spot so that people can get a full rich tone out of it. So this is the ML-30.
So I think one of the things people are surprised about is that beginning student model is really meant for durability, and it tends to be sound a little bit duller because its primary function is to be a rental workhorse. But what you're talking about with this ML-30 and it being a very friendly instrument, I assume that means it's going to translate to responding quicker, having a nice bright response to the sound, and just basically be like a little bit peppier instrument to play. Is that a fair statement?
It's fair. And it's fair because yes, it's smoother and warmer. And so because of that, it's more approachable. And so you can get a big, bright, peppy sound, but it doesn't sound harsh. So I think there's an instrument can project a lot of different frequencies, and it's really that how those frequencies are tailored that gives you the perception of a really smooth sound or a really a harsh sound. So everybody, I think, wants that bright, peppy sound, but they don't want the harshness, and that's the trick. That's why a student violin is a student violin. You can only do so much with the materials that you're given, the time that you're given to fit within a certain price point. So the reason I'm kind of starting with the Bellafina is because we're going to go up to two other models that are better. And I kind of want to walk you through it because, over the years, I've had the chance to attend a lot of the Upgrade Your Sound events in person. So these are some of my favorite things to do. I get to work with the store sales reps. I get to work with students and parents. And I think explaining, okay, this is why a violin can sound a certain way, good or bad. And let's kind of walk up so you understand, okay, this is a good violin. This is a good violin. And I'm going to show you a better one. And then what I think is one of the best ones that we have. But exactly that, you kind of want that magic combination of warm and bright, but it's easier said than done.
Well, that's a great segue, Hans. Let's move on to the Strobel. I think you have the 205 model Strobel there to talk to us a little bit about.
So the Strobel ML-205. This is one of my favorites. So I'm just updating my notes here. But I've been working with this violin personally for about 8 years now, and this has made many violinists very happy. It's a step up from the Bellafina in that the makers spent a lot more time in the graduation process. What do I mean by graduation process? That's another word for thicknessing of the plates. And so I showed you kind of the curvature of the instrument. So that's always kind of changing. What you see with the thicknessing of the plates is that around the edges, it's a little bit thinner, okay? And in the center, it's a little bit thicker. We're talking about a difference of 1 millimeter or 2 in thickness. But those differences have a huge impact on how freely the plates can vibrate. So if you imagine, basically this is an acoustic spring. So if you think about a spring where you can very clearly see the coils of the spring, and if you push it down, you're exerting a force on it, and then you let up and it springs back up. You don't really see that with the violin, but if you had a high-speed camera or something like that, you would see basically a violin is made to be very responsive and very elastic. And the more elastic it can be, the greater range of tone you can get. Ideally, you'd make it very, very thin, but we're making these violins to last not a year or 10 years. Violins are traditionally made to last and can last for 100 years, 200 years. Of course, there's a lot of care and maintenance that go into that. So that's the other part of it. But if it's made well, it can last that long. And so the trick is to make it thin enough to really be responsive, but strong enough to stand the test of time. You've got anywhere from 20 to 30 pounds of force going down on the bridge. So, right here, it's maybe 3 or 4 millimeters thick. I don't want to get into too much detail, but I think you get the idea that how much time and care a luthier spends in the carving process is really kind of the most important thing for tone quality. And so with the Strobel 205, we're getting that next level of craftsmanship. So they're able to really get, I would say, compared to the Bellafina, okay, now you're talking about really a much bigger, broader sound. Now, instead of a piano and a forte dynamic, you're getting maybe pianissimo to fortissimo. So you're expanding your range of of dynamics, of tone color. And that's only possible because of the carving process. And for this model, we use actually a European spruce top. And I should say, for any folks that are asking, this Strobel 205 model is made by our partner workshop in China. Um, I've been in the business for close to 20 years, so I've seen kind of the evolution of instruments made, mostly made in Europe and now in China. If you work with the best makers, then you're going to get amazing violins. So I'm very happy to say our partner makers in China are among the best. A lot of them have studied in Europe or America and entered competitions, won medals. So they're just as talented, and the information that they have to craft a really fine violin is it's exciting for me because the price points are such that your average student, even amateur players on a budget can get something that actually sounds amazing. You couldn't find a violin that sounds this good for this price 20 years ago. So that's the fun part for me is seeing that kind of change in the market. But again, to get back to the 205, I think you're going to get that step up of bigger sound and a wider range of dynamics. So
you referenced the tone woods being European, and on the Bellafina model being Romanian. What is it about the Eastern European tradition for the tone woods that go into making violins that make it so special?
Oh, that's a good question. Really, I think from a maker's perspective, it's the density and the kind of the growth patterns and growth tendencies of the wood. So one of the reasons that for hundreds of years, a lot of makers have preferred woods from certain mountain regions, whether they be in Italy or Austria or the Carpathian Mountains, which stretch, from I think Slovakia down to Romania. At these very high altitudes, the woods are growing the trees are growing very slowly. And so you have in the winter months, very, very slow growth. That means that, I'm sure you've looked at the rings of a tree, and you can see kind of year by year how it grows. And you'll notice some of the rings are very, very narrow, and then they alternating with the wider rings, which are the growth rings in the summer months when there's more light and water and sunshine. So it's a recipe that has been perfected in those Carpathian Mountains. I would say actually there are a lot of Italian makers, German makers that go to the Carpathian Mountains to get some of those fancy woods. Our makers of the Bellafina line, they're not using those woods. It's kind of a couple levels down. But I would say, and I mentioned that was Romanian because there is a certain kind of sound, and that when I mentioned it's a warm sound, it's a smooth sound, it's a very friendly sound. I don't know what it is about that, but that I've seen a lot of Romanian instruments, a lot of Hungarian instruments. They have that kind of sound. So I think it's just something about the culture and an appreciation for that kind of tone quality.
It's important to remember that at the end, all of these instruments are still organic products, and every piece of wood is just a little bit different, even though a region may have some uniqueness about it. And that's what I think makes the violin market so interesting, because every level of instrument can have a different type of wood from a different region that gives a different characteristic of it. And you combine that with a skilled luthier to really bring out that tone is where the magic happens. So transitioning to the 605 model that you have, where does that then pick up from the 205?
Yeah, so the 605 is right here. It's been here the whole time. It's a really beautifully made instrument. I mean, if you may not be able to see it on camera, but so this is the 205 here, and this is the 605. It may be hard to pick up, but there's an approach in the making where there's probably 20 layers of varnish. And so the ground coats are much more transparent. The other coats just have this really lovely warm brown color, but it's the type of spirit finish that they're using that's very flexible. And that flexibility, I talked about, a spring, and I talked about elasticity. Those are terms and concepts that to me are very important for a string player, because it's kind of the essence of what these instruments do. Again, you have to have the substance there, because that's what's kind of creating the vibrations. But if it's too thick, if it's too stiff, you're going to get a very dull, uninteresting sound. It's not going to be very loud. If you want to play loud, you're going to have to exert a lot of effort. So for me, the fun part is when you step up to this level, there's really less effort required. But the more skill you have, you can push it more. Okay. So whereas the ML-205 has, again, it's kind of at that middle level where I would say if you've been playing for 3 or 4 years, really like to practice, the ML-205 is great. If you've been playing a little bit longer and more excited about rehearsals and performances, maybe you're doing competitions. I know a lot of kids will do all-state competitions either in the spring or fall. Okay, if you're going to do that, you're thinking about a certain kind of presence and a certain kind of performance quality, and so you want to be heard, and you don't want to work too hard to do that. Again, you're getting that. I talked about going from piano to forte to pianissimo to fortissimo. Now we're going from 3 Ps to 3 or 4 Fs. We're just widening that range of what this violin can do. So here, another important component is the aging of the tone wood. So the longer that so it's spruce on the top again, and on the sides and the back, it's maple. And so the longer that those are aged before they're carved, they actually become more stable, one, but there's a kind of a chemical process, a polymerization that happens, and it allows the wood to become more flexible and more elastic. So the longer you let it age before you carve, the final product is going to just be a little bit more interesting sounding. So the aging of the tone wood is kind of that next level of the next factor that's a big factor in improving sound. So we've got longer age tone woods. This is probably age 4 to 5 years before carving. The other ones are probably 1 to 2 years aged. So 4 to 5 years aged, there's going to be a lot more time in the carving process. So it's a longer making cycle. And again, that really just translates directly to the musician. Okay. They're spending more time using better materials. Who cares? Well, a good violinist cares, because if you give it to maybe a teacher in the store and have them play the 3 violins for you, in the hands of a professional, you can hear very clearly. You can hear the differences. They'll make them all sound good, but you'll hear a basic. You'll hear differences, and so again, that's where the effort of the makers, the skill of the makers, and the experience of the makers allows these instruments to really blossom. So that's why the 605 is one of my favorites.
I'm really curious to hear your input, Hans. On you've worked with a lot of students as they're selecting better instruments. Tell me a little bit about when is the right time for a student to be looking at a step-up instrument, either to the Bellafina, the ML-30 that you first showed us, or the Strobel 605 that you just showed us. How would a student or parent know that this is the right time they should be thinking about that?
No, it's a good question. I think really it comes down to, the first question I usually ask is whether the student is taking private lessons. I would say 9 times out of 10, if the student is taking private lessons and they're on the same instrument that they started out with, the fact that they're taking private lessons means they're committed to it. Okay. So if you're committed to it and really appreciate and want to learn new music and more advanced music, there's going to be a point pretty quickly where the sound of your basic student violin is going to be pretty unexciting, and it's just not motivating at all. So whether whether the student is just about to start taking private lessons or has been taking private lessons, I would say that's a key milestone to really consider moving up. And then, you know, a lot of times it's at the end of the school year or the summer or the beginning of the school year when they come back and kind of see their friends and see who's gotten better and who hasn't. And so oftentimes it's the, you know, beginning or the end of the school year where it's kind of that time to check in again and say, okay, do I still like to play the violin? Do I still like to practice? Again, if you like playing, then you're just going to do yourself a favor by getting the best possible violin you can. It makes learning easier. It makes learning technique easier. Why learn technique? Well, it helps you, allows you to be more musically expressive. Okay, so that musical expression that you're trying to learn through technique sometimes hits a big roadblock with a bad violin, you know, a student violin. So again, if you're learning more advanced techniques, getting ready for a competition, that's another very important time, I think, to consider, you know, looking for a better step up instrument. So yeah, there are a couple milestones I think to keep in mind.
I think that's a great way to phrase it. I actually have a good friend who calls it the fun factor in an instrument that's more fun to play by nature. You're going to spend more time playing. You can express yourself, and it creates the sound and tone that you hear in your ears that maybe you can't produce with your other instrument. So
Absolutely.
Hans, I know you're a cello player by trade, but maybe you can play a little bit of the three instruments for us, just something simple so that we can kind of get a little bit of a sense of the relative tone as you move up through those three instruments.
Yeah, let me grab a bow for each.
And I realize that we're all listening through computer speakers and headphones, but I'd also appreciate your feedback in terms of, from a player's perspective, what are you hearing in your space as a player from that instrument?
So I'll start with the Bellafina ML-30. So playing a G major scale, I think what I first noticed is the open G string. That first note is kind of a telltale note for a lot of violins. Most student violins, you play that and maybe you get a honk. I mean, you get a sound, but it's maybe not that pleasant. And so when I'm playing this, again, I don't know if you can hear it through the computer speakers, but what I get in my room is just this nice roundness. It's a sound it's emanating and kind of going around me. So that's the fun part. And then certainly so you've got enough clarity and articulation there that it's got that pep and that clarity that you were talking about before. Again, so this is the ML-30,
and that had the
easy to play.
That had the Romanian tone woods, correct?
Exactly.
Set up and adjusted in the United States, and kind of the first step of the step up models.
Absolutely. Now we'll go on to the Strobel ML-205.
All right. And if I remember correctly, the 205 now moves to European
Yeah.
spruce.
Yep.
A little bit more care and attention in terms of the manufacturing.
I get goosebumps just playing the E string. It's such a kind of so to me, metallic is a bad word, but silvery. It's got this very beautiful beautiful E string. I mean, it's brilliant, but in a very smooth, sweet way. I guess sweet would be a good way to describe the 205. So there's clarity, there's sweetness, there's a lot of fullness to the sound. And I would say, I think it projects more. So I feel like it fills up this whole, I've got kind of some vaulted ceilings. It really fills up the room in a big way. Again, that's for the student who's looking to do more performance wise. And then I'm going to play now the Strobel ML-605. And so this has the total package. The 605 has everything. It's got the warmth, the richness. It's got the brilliance. I just feel there's just more there to it. I'm not, I'm a cellist, but in the hands of a very skilled violinist, that's where you'd hear it really shine. And I would say you could kind of think of me as a student. So as a customer, I might not be ready for this, but if I keep practicing violin, give me a couple years, and this might be the perfect thing that would really allow me to then, continue
But
my musical journey.
even though you're considering yourself kind of a student, you can clearly hear the difference between those three instruments, the added resonance, the added clarity and sparkle to the sound. So I think that's that's pretty important to note that a student will be able to discern that. What's the right way, Hans, to try a violin? So we talked about when's the right time to step up. Okay, let's say the students now in a store, they're trying out the 205 and the 605. How should a student go about doing that? Is there some recommendations you have for what to play? You played a G major scale. Should a student play something like that to really gauge the two instruments?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I would definitely always start with scales. Just because you're not thinking about your playing, you're just listening for tones. So start with scales. Pick two violins to show your customer, and just ask them to play a scale on each. Do they hear a difference? Now, I'll tell you, 8 times out of 10, I would say most students on the spot are kind of like a deer in the headlights. They're not sure what to hear or what to listen for. So, but you kind of you're helping them. So you can kind of listen, maybe point out a couple words: bright, dark, warm, smooth, things that you hear. And then I would have them work on a piece that they're working on now. Okay. Again, it goes back to why is now a good time to look for a better instrument? Well, I'm working on this piece, and my teacher said I want you to get a forte sound with a certain kind of a darkness. Okay. Let's try that passage that you've been talking about with your teacher. Let's try it now. Let's try it on this violin. Let's try that on the other violin. And I guarantee one of them is going to speak more to that characteristic. You might have to gently point it out, and again using words to help them kind of develop their ear. But then once you've moved on from that and maybe try some more instruments, have them maybe play something. And I'm so sorry, I skipped a step. Before you tackle the thing that's more challenging, I would say go back. Let's play the piece that you played at the last recital or at the last concert that you're totally comfortable with. It's a book one piece or book two, and you played it last year, and it's actually your favorite. Use that, and I would say maybe take 4 bars. Don't play the whole piece, because then you're thinking about the piece. You're thinking about phrasing, and take 4 bars and think about those 4 bars in a very musical way, and think about dynamics. Think about volume, and try different things with those 4 bars on this violin and the other violin when you're comfortable. And so that's the second step. And so, sorry, the third step would be tackling that piece that's more challenging and that will really test those instruments.
That's really good advice. I think so often students come in and they try to play something really difficult that they are challenged with to start with, and expect that the new instrument will allow them to play the piece they haven't been able to play yet. And immediately you're setting yourself up for disappointment. So I have one more question, Hans, before we wrap things up. We didn't talk at all about the cases and bows that these come with, because the maintenance of the instrument and keeping proper humidity and how the case can help to support that is really essential as you get into a better instrument, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We've tried to put these outfits together so that whether it's the bow or the case or the strings, we've thought about, and I'll just really quickly go through. So the ML-30 has the Zyx strings, which again, nice, warm, smooth sound, but quick, clear response. We've got a nice wooden Brazil wood bow. So real wood, real horsehair. It just allows a quickness and an expressiveness that's lets it shine. The case is very important. This is one of the CC398 oblong cases. It's a lightweight case, plenty of room for sheet music there, and then room for 2 bows. It's got a hygrometer. So the hygrometer, we talked about wood and how organic and natural it is. It's also very sensitive to changes in temperature and humidity. So now as we get into the winter months where temperatures start to drop, it starts to become a lot drier. It's very important to have your customers gauge the humidity. I would say, case humidifiers are very important. So that is a hygrometer. It's going to tell you whether it's too dry or too, 30 to 40% humidity is really ideal for instruments. But you got to, if it's too dry, you get a damp it. You get Planet Waves. They make some good humidification products. It's certainly a very important part of the responsibility of ownership. So I talked about these violins can last 10 years, 50 years, 100 years. If you take care of them properly, they certainly can. The fun case is, so as we go up to the 205, we're getting it's a carbon composite bow. And so these usually have a much quicker response. And for the relative price points, you're getting just a bigger sound and quicker response out of the carbon composite. And then with the Strobel ML-605, we're using a Dorfler, which is a German bow maker. It's a Pernambuco wood, which is the best type of wood that you can use for bows. And this again allows an even greater range of tone to come out. So sometimes people think of just the violin is producing the tone, but without the bow, there's not much going on. So It's not only the hair, the rosin on the hair is what pulls the string, okay? But the wood of the bow is also going to vibrate. And so it can have a great impact or it can have no impact at all. We've selected the door flare bows because they really help widen the range of frequencies that this firearm produces. And then the other thing about the 605, it comes with a really beautiful case. Again, this is got 4 bow holders. It's got a digital hygrometer, several accessories compartments. The big thing I'll point out here is the suspension cushioning here. We want to keep the instrument kind of suspended in the middle. So the suspension is basically holding it here and here and allowing this part to be not touching anything. You want that free. So yeah, really fine case. And again, the bow, as Kurt mentioned previously, we could do a whole session on bows. We won't do that now, but the door for bow is a big component to help get out a great sound.
There's some really amazing cases also that you guys offer. The case and the bow are an important part of the package, and I can appreciate that you guys have really done a good job in selecting the right components for the Bellafina, the 30, and then the 2 Strobel models that we talked about. And very nice package indeed. So Hans, I'd like to thank you for taking time out to join us in this product showcase about the Strobel and Bellafina instruments that Howard Core makes. I think everybody will agree that these instruments are among the top choices in the market today for that advancing student and many levels of players. During this Upgrade Your Sound showcase, we've got a number of great offers going on, including 48-month financing. This is the first time Music and Arts has been able to offer 48-month financing. You can learn more by visiting any Music and Arts store, or you can find 48-month financing online through Woodwind and Brasswind. You'll receive some additional information following the session about that. Or in addition to financing, we have another special offer. If you choose not to do financing, 15% off instruments $199 or more. That'll run through the end of this month. And if you have more questions, the showcase extends in stores through the weekend, where you can visit your local Music and Arts store, speak to an expert, try these phenomenal instruments, learn more about the lessons, repair services that we offer. So thank you again to Hans and the fine folks over at Howard Core for joining us, talking about the Bellafina and Strobel line of instruments. And thank you so much, Hans.
Thank you, Kurt. Take care, everybody.